Hello students, under me here is a video in structural theory and I'm going to discuss the importance of the course to your field. So we also have preliminary requirements for successful study, and the course is about theory of determinate and indeterminate structures. So this course is important to CE IQ because this is in connection and the continuation of the foundation course, which is statics. The only difference is this time we deal with actual structures. The loadings are generated by the actual pressure and the actual density of materials used as structural members, and you should also know how to arrange especially live loads in order to cause maximum influence to the results such as reactions, shear, moment, or deflections. Then for you to be successful in the course, you should be able to continually adapt the principles of statics in this course as well as the principles of the mechanics of materials or the strength of materials. Of course, along with it would be the skills, mathematical skills that you have at present in order to analyze structures that are subjected to realistic loads. And it is called theory of determinate and indeterminate structures because on the first part we deal with determinate structures that are also stable and can be analyzed using the equations of statics, available equations of statics for 2D or two-dimensional system. Then we can analyze that by three independent static equations: summation forces x0, summation forces y0, and summation of moment equals 0. And for the three-dimensional structures, then we'll have six available equations of statics, namely summation forces x, y, and z equals 0, and summation of moment about x-axis, y-axis, z-axis equals 0. Then for indeterminate structures, you have to reinforce knowledge, especially on calculating beam deflections as additional conditions in order to completely analyze indeterminate structures. This will be explained later. So for instance, if you have a continuous beams with fixed support at the left, then roller supports, two additional supports, then it is indeterminate to the second degree because at the fixed supports there are three reactions. Another one reaction at the first roller support, then another roller reaction at the second roller support. So therefore there are five unknown reactions, external reactions, all in all, less three available equations of statics. So that's why it is indeterminate to the second degree. And we use the concept on computing deflections in order to address those two additional unknowns. Now, what's the role of structural engineering in structural engineering projects? So first, let's define what structural engineering is. So it is the science and art of planning, designing, and constructing safe and economical structures that will serve their intended purpose. So that's structural engineering. Then in structural engineering, there are phases of what we call typical structural engineering project. And the first part is the planning phase. In the planning phase, the experience of the constructors, the structural engineers, as well as the laborers, skilled laborers, are crucial in this first part. And because of that experience, the decision as to what type of structure should be constructed in a site, such as if it is purely reinforced concrete or made of steel or composite structures, combination of concrete and steel will be erected in a site. So this will prepare for possible problems that may arise for the type of materials that should be constructed in the site. So just to give you an idea, if the site is close to coastal areas, so where we have frequent occurrence of wind, then it is recommended that it should be made of reinforced concrete. But if the project is to be built in areas far from coastal boundaries, then it should be made of steel. So remember that if it is made of concrete, the prevailing live load, lateral load that will be acting on the building would be earthquake load, because it is heavier and it is also wind resistant. Likewise, if it is made of steel, then it should be placed on areas covered with vegetation, so that the wind effect is not that crucial in the overall effect of the wind load to the structure. So that's the planning phase. Then after that, the next phase would be the preliminary structural design. Here you decide for the dimensions by assumptions based on experience also, so that you can estimate for the dead loads that structural member will be subjected to. So here we have to select sections, sizes by approximate method and experience. Then once the sections are being selected, you can now compute for the dead loads. Then you have to you can now estimate the loads. These loads may be dead loads and live loads, where the structure will be subjected to. Then after the loads are calculated and placed to a structural member or the overall structure, and the next phase would be the structural analysis, and this plays our part. So from the estimation of loads to the preliminary structural analysis, and this course now begins from estimation of loads, then the preliminary structural analysis. Then in the structural analysis, the results would be in a form of reactions, stresses, and deflections. Then these stresses, reactions, and deflections are compared to the allowable values or limiting values, so that the structure will be safe. Or in some cases, the new practice nowadays is to magnify these loads, then compute the reactions, then from there we can compare the magnified stresses to be less than the magnified or ultimate values, or the limitation of the stresses, deflections, reactions, and so on and so forth. So we have structural analysis, then we are going to evaluate if the structural members are all safe with regards to the application of the loads. So if the service and safety requirements are satisfied, then you proceed with the construction phase. Otherwise, if these safety and serviceability requirements are not satisfied, so one example of safety is we compare the resulting stresses to the stresses that a structural member can carry. If the actual and magnified stresses would be less than that value, then it is safe. Serviceability means this refers to the deflection, allowable deflection, the cracks, if there are cracks tolerable compared to the limit for deflections and crack width, for example. If they are less than those values, then we proceed with the construction phase. Otherwise, we proceed with the re-estimation of loads. If not, so that we have to refine the estimation of loads, we have to increase sizes and so on and so forth, so that in the final structural analysis, all those conditions shall be met. So if the safety and serviceability requirements are finally satisfied, then we proceed with the construction phase. So those are the different phases of the typical structural engineering project. So again, for the planning phase, experience is crucial, and the structure should be economical. Then in the preliminary structural design, you have to select sections, or in some cases assume sizes. Then we have to undergo approximate method in order to calculate these reaction stresses and deflections. And we have to, along with that, we have to estimate the loads. Then in structural analysis, you have to determine stresses, reactions, and deflections. And finally, if the safety and serviceability requirements are satisfied, you proceed with the construction phase by preparing the drawings and layout. So next is we have to classify structures so that civil engineers or structural engineers would be able to decide the type of materials or structure that will be used in catching or transferring or transmitting the loads to the structure. So one structure, because this is the most important decision that should be made by a structural engineer in implementing an engineering project, the selection of the type of structures to be used in supporting or transmitting loads. So if the loads would be coming from environmental loads and the supports will be relatively very far from each other, then we have to use tension structures. These are made of cables, rods, suspension bridges, etc. So for instance, if in a gymnasium, which is considerably a big area, then the roofing system may be suspended from this cable system. And these are the reactions at the point of attachment with the roofing system. So the structure will look like this, and these are the loads. The transmitted reactions at the suspended at the suspension points where the suspended object is hung. Then it may also be this cable here, suspension bridge, which is a tension structure in supporting loads moving on the deck of a bridge, so which consists of dead loads and live loads. And if the load can be considered uniform, projected upon the horizontal span of the bridge, then that cable will be parabolic cable. The next type of structure that will support or transmit loads would be the compression structures such as columns and arches. It may also be made of beam columns which are straight members subjected also to lateral loads. So this is an example of an arch bridge. Then this portion of the arch will be subjected to compression. So the loads are moving from the top, both moving or non-moving loads. Then because of these verticals, the loads will be transmitted to this arc, which will be subjected to compression. Then also for beam column connections, columns may be subjected to both bending and compression. The beam is subjected to bending, and this is an example of a column beam connection, which will be subjected to compression and bending. Next, if the span is not that long or shorter than this span here, then we can have a bridge truss or a roof truss. So I think you are familiar with bridge trusses like this one. So the span is long, but it is shorter than this span here, or this suspension bridge, the span of the suspension bridge. So you can use this type of structure in supporting or transmitting loads. Then we have also to decide on in resisting shear effects of wind or earthquake. So we have to decide on the shear structures. Normally, if we have a building here, the end walls are thicker, and the purpose of that, and this one also, the purpose of that is to resist lateral movement or lateral shear force caused by wind or earthquake. And finally, for challenging part, we have these shear structures, bending structures like beam and girders. So this is a girder. It's also a beam, but greater in size, and these are the floor beams subjected to bending. And you already underwent with this type of structure in not only in statics but also in mechanics of materials or strength of materials. Then we will have to study loads on girders later. So finally, we have this challenging structure, which is a structure to be dealt with for students in the postgraduate field. And that is, if you want to pursue doctoral in civil engineering, then you will deal with this type of structures. It may be the roofing system of a dome or this sports complex. Then that's a surface structure. It's very thin slab, but curved, and you will deal with that. Now, in order to analyze those types of structures, we have to simplify the structure by idealizing it or idealizing them so that the analysis would be simpler. So we define an analytical model as a simplified representation of an idealization of a real structure for the purpose of analysis. So the objective of the model is to simplify the structure, to simplify the analysis of a complicated structure. So that's why we have to use this, what we call, you have to weigh if the structure can be analyzed as plane or surface or space structures. So for structures such as this, so we have this may be a footbridge, and because we have similar supports of this shape like trapezoidal frame, then we can say by the tributary area method, half to the left, then half to the right, then analyze the loadings, then we can simply say that we can analyze this as a plane structure. Then we have here a roof truss. So the truss can be considered as a plane structure. So notice that the loadings will be transmitted to the joints where the floor joists, where the purlins are attached to. And furthermore, notice that the loads at the internal joints are twice that at the external joint. Purpose of that is the tributary area of internal joints is double the tributary area of the external joint. So that's it. That's the explanation why the loadings at internal joints, in this case 300 pounds, are 2 times the loading of the external joint. So I hope that you know that. Then we have the line diagram. So these structures are then drawn, or the members are then drawn to represent lines so that we can easily draw them and analyze the stresses or forces of each member. And the method of analysis, especially for determinate trusses, were introduced already in statics, and you only need those two basic tools, the method of joints and the method of sections. Those are enough in analyzing plane trusses, whether these trusses are simple, compound, or complicated or complex trusses. Those are enough tools for us to analyze plane trusses. The rest would be, it depends on your mathematical skills. So then we have to look at the connections, whether we can consider them as fixed, pinned, or roller supported. So line diagram already discussed. So for this real structure, for example, then this is now the line diagram for us to analyze the structure and the transmitted loads. Then this is a type of space truss which cannot be analyzed as or considered as a plane structure. Then for the connections, so if we can consider it as a pin or roller supported, then we have here a typical pin supported connection. So we can just consider a pin with two restraints, horizontal and vertical, while this one where the bolts is massive and at the same time it's also welded, then we can consider this as a fixed support. Then for concrete, so it is obviously that we should treat this as a roller support and this one as a fixed support. So you have to decide as a structural engineer about the supports, whether we can consider that as fixed, beam connected, or roller supported. The next one would be the loads on structures, and this is where we have to calculate dead loads based on the density of the materials, and you need P6 and integral calculus here. It's easy because the weight is simply the density of the material, weight density of the material, or specific weight or unit weight times the volume of the material. So we have to compute dead loads, live loads. So these dead loads here are fixed in position and also in magnitude, and we can compute this based on the information of their densities. And of course, as engineering students, you should familiar with common engineering materials such as reinforced concrete, where the specific gravity is 2.4, water, specific weight or weight density 9.81 kilonewtons per cubic meter. Then steel, which specific gravity ranges from 7.8 to 7.86, but always remember we have to adapt the highest value, 7.86. We also compute live loads. The occupants, people like us, are transit loads. We can be considered live loads. Vehicle loads are live loads, loads that are not both fixed in magnitude and position are considered live loads. Then we have the effect of impact, especially if the loads are not placed gradually, so such as loads that will develop because of vibrations, explosions, and so on and so forth, stamping, like that. So we have to consider impact by calculating impact factor. Then we have the wind loads. The calculation of this is very complicated because the wind pressure distribution is logarithmic or exponential, but we will just make this uniform, and there are tables in the NECP, but I don't want you to use those tables because there's so many tables. I'll just give you the what we call wind pressure coefficient, and from there we can generate the loads which are uniform and analyze the structure. Then we have snow loads. We don't have snow in the Philippines, but in other regions, especially near the polar regions, structures will be subjected to snow loads also. But in our course, we will just neglect this. But if you want to study about snow loads, then there are available books, and also in the NECP or in ECI codes in the US where snow loads are incorporated. Then earthquake loads, you'll have structural dynamics where you can calculate earthquake loads. Here it's just an introduction. Hydrostatic and soil pressures, then we'll have this also. You have background in physics on how to compute hydrostatic pressure. Then I will also adapt it here, although this course is in the second semester usually. Then we have thermal and other effects, so we'll just incorporate this in the structure, such as the thermal expansion or contraction. So there's a formula in computing for the corresponding thermal displacements. Other effects such as heat elements will be incorporated in the problem. Then we have load combinations. For the meantime, the recent NECP is based on 2015, supposedly 2019. It was edited in 2015 because of the effect of Yolanda. So most portions of the NECP, the edited ones, would be on the wind load version. Then the objective of a structural engineer is to design a structure that will be able to withstand all the loads to which it is subjected while serving its intended purpose throughout its intended lifespan. He or she must take into account all the loads that must realistically be expected to act on the structure during its planned lifespan. Then we have here a table for minimum densities for design loads. The complete list would be in NECP, and I have the clips also, not all. If you want the complete listings of these different materials and the densities, then you can have that from NECP 2015. But you should not worry because I'm just going you to memorize two important values: density of reinforced concrete, this one, SI, 23.6 kilonewtons per cubic meter. This is supposedly 23.56, 9.81 times 2.4, 23.56, but rounded up to 23.6. So as mentioned earlier, use the upper limit for weight density or specific weight or unit weight, kilonewtons per cubic meter. And you're just familiar with the others, don't worry, because I'm not going to let you copy this table, but I will just give you the values of the densities for steel. For example, 77.3, that's 7.86 times 9.81 kilonewtons per cubic meter. So just familiar with these two unless otherwise specified in the problem. For the rest of the materials, it will be given. So here are the clips from National Structural Code of the Philippines 2015. Some of these materials are already in the table in the preceding slides, but just to give you ideas about the densities. So don't worry, because you're not going to memorize this. I will not also let you copy this. I'll just give the values when the type of material is mentioned in the problem. These are the continuations. These are not complete, so on and so forth. So other materials, we have masonry, rubble stone, for example. Then we have tin, water, fresh and seawater, and so on and so forth. I mentioned that the specific weight or weight density of water is 9.81. It is 9.8 here, but I want you to use 9.81 because it is higher. These are the different loads on the different portion of the structures, floor finishes, and so on and so forth, frame partitions. So as I said, don't you worry, these are just portion of the clips of NECP 2015 for frame walls and so on and so forth, concrete masonry, and so on and so forth. Then we have live loads, access floor system, office use, computer use. These are the loads in kilopascals, kilonewtons per square meter. That's the meaning of that. And if there are concentrated loads, so these are the assigned loads for this portion or part of the structure. I will not go in detail here as long as you're reminded or informed that loads are present in the MSAP. All you have to do is look at them there. So if you will be assigned to a hospital project, then these are the loads also to be assigned. And we have vertical loads and so on and so forth. Then here is a map of the Philippines, and you can see there lightly the wind speeds assigned to areas. I think this is also with regards to different exposure. So you can see here 300 kilometers per hour wind speed assigned, 310 kilometers per hour wind velocity assigned. Then we'll just develop a formula later which I derived on how to transmit this wind load to vertical surface or projections.